Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 Fall FedEx Bermuda Championship DFS Tactics show. We have a lot to get into, the forecast to update for you all, and of course the optimal plays this week for the Bermuda Championship, your best pivots, the best fades, any 6K plays, lineup constructions and theory, all of that good stuff. I am excited to try and get on the winning track. It has been a little bit of a disappointing month or so let's see if we can turn things around here, and let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best tool out there for your money in terms of golf analytics. It's going to make you a much smarter golf DFS player. It's going to give you an upper hand in the golf wager market. So go check out fantasynational.com. You won't regret it. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media, my X and Instagram, where I post research every week around the PGA Tour. So if you want to see the research that I do, give me a follow at your preferred social media site, X or Instagram. That comes out every Monday afternoon. X is also where I post my betting cards every week on the PGA Tour. That'll be no different. That comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show, so that'll be out later tonight. And on X, I also show my player exposure for the lineups for the slate of contests that I play over on DraftKings. So if you want to see either of that information, give me a follow over at X. And then lastly, for social media, Gabe's X handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe, and because it is Wednesday night, we are going to be continuing the DFS talk over in his Substack chat. And the only way you're going to be able to join us is if you are a subscriber to his article. It is free to do so, by the way. So go show Gabe some support. Follow him over on social media, over on X, and subscribe to that article. Again, it's a very, very good read. It gets you ready for the week at hand. And then finally, we're live. Chat is open. Want to hear from you all in addition to the poll question, which I will post here momentarily. Who is your winner this week in Bermuda? What kind of lineups are you focusing on? Who do you think has the upper hand? Any players you're staying away from? I want to hear from you all. So let's figure out our strategies, our tactics for the 2023 Fall FedEx Bermuda Championship. And we're going to start, as we always do, on a Wednesday evening over at the updated forecast over at Windfinder. And you see we have the super forecast up. And before we get any further, let me post the poll question for the evening, which is, how much did you factor past performance at Port Royal this week? Was it a significant amount? Was it a moderate amount, a minor amount, or not at all? So a little bit of theory, I guess, would be the best way to put it. How much did you factor in past performance, specifically at Port Royal? Since we don't have too much in terms of data, we do have a little bit. But moving into the forecast for this weekend, you see tomorrow looks amazing. It's going to be fantastic scoring conditions, high of 72, very, very little wind, and this is the outlier for the week. This is the only day that does not have a significant amount of wind in the forecast. So Thursday, tomorrow, players are going to have to go low, because you see Friday, the winds pick up to anywhere between the high teens to 20s in terms of sustained winds and gusts. But no AM or PM wave advantage that I see, especially considering that the wind direction generally stays the same. Mostly this west, southwest to east, northeast wind. Perhaps changes a little bit for the Thursday morning in the sense that it is more northwest to southeast as opposed to southwest to northeast. But anyway, I don't see an AM or PM favor here. And that is one area where, if you follow Gabe already over on social media. He is putting a pretty big emphasis in the Thursday PM, Friday AM portion, because he thinks, or he has seen somewhere where the winds are going to probably pick up a little bit more on Friday afternoon. Again, I'm just going by this wind finder forecast, so I do not see an advantage at all for either half of the draw. This is just going to be a week to play your players. However, with that said, I will say that anyone that has not performed well in the wind is going to be downgraded significantly to me. You see Thursday is pleasant, but Friday is going to be windy. And then when we get to the weekend, which again, we don't have the super forecast for the weekend, but you see Saturday, significant amount of wind throughout the day. It does look like it might taper off, die down a little bit at the end of Saturday, but then Sunday is a lot of wind, looking like perhaps 18 to 20 sustained, gusts maybe into the low 20s. And if this system, this rain that is forecast for Monday gets moved up, then we are looking at a very similar Sunday that we had 2 years ago when Lucas Herbert won. But you see a significant amount of rain in the forecast late on Sunday, early Monday. So if that gets pushed up, it's going to make the tournament that much more difficult, in my opinion. So anyway, here's a look one more time at the cut portion of the tournament. Thursday, tomorrow, looks fantastic. Very little wind. Players are going to have to go low because the wind is going to pick up for the remainder of the tournament. So with that, we will move to Fantasy National. You see that I have the time frame at the beginning of 2022. That's just to make sure we have enough rounds for the moderate and windy filters. So in moderate and windy conditions, going back to the beginning of 2022, our top performers in the wind have been Scott Piercy, Adam Scott, Alex Noren, Alex Smalley, Cameron Percy, Kevin Yu, Adam Long, Thomas Dietrich, Ben Griffin, and Ryan Armour. So me personally, because 3 of the 4 days look like they're going to have a significant amount of wind, I am giving these players a pretty significant boost in my rankings. Moving on down to about the top 30 here or so, you've got Brandon Wu, Andrew Novak, Lonto Griffin, David Lipsky, Martin Contini, although it is only 4 rounds, so a very small sample size. Kind of the same with Thomas Dietrich up here, only 7 rounds, small sample size, but he's performed very well in the wind. Davis Riley, Brendan Todd, and so on down, you can see there to about the top 30. Again, I'm giving these players a pretty decent boost in my rankings, at least in my own lineup constructions, considering the amount of wind is in the forecast for this week. The other end of the spectrum, players who have not played well in the wind: David Hearn, Harry Higgs, Andrew Landry, Nick Watney, Jonas Blixt, Jim Herman, Max McGreevy, Wesley Bryan, Dylan Wu, Jason Duffner, Brian Gay, a former champion here who has played this course extremely well, Robert Garrigus, Russell Knox, and so on down to about the bottom 30 or so there for you. I'm giving these players a pretty significant downgrade in my rankings or lineup constructions, if you will, considering how much wind is in the forecast. So with that, I think that's a pretty good segue. We're going to move to the mixed condition model. We looked throughout the week on performance on short courses, so I encourage you to go check the Sunday and Monday shows, the initial research and the DFS and the data dive to see performance on short courses. If I had to guess, this is going to play more difficult just due to the amount of wind in the forecast, but I'm not extremely confident that it's going to play difficult. It's just my guess. And tomorrow should play very, very easy. So I know not every round is going to play difficult. So I'm not comfortable using this filter this week, and none of the metrics that I have used in the mixed condition model have an easy or difficult to par filter. But speaking of the mixed condition model, we'll move there now. And this is one of the few times that I have ended up using all four major strokes gained categories. Apologies as I center that camera. 10% off the tee. I mentioned how I've been focused on the distance portion, but I was going to have some off the tee in the mixed condition model. Kind of waffled between 5 and 10%. Ended up with 10% in off the tee, especially with the amount of wind. I just think it's going to be very important to find fairways. I'm still focused on the distance, as you'll see here in a little bit. But I think it's going to be important to find fairways. That way you can control your spin in this wind. So you can't be in the rough all the time. So 10% off the tee, and I did use the short course filter, as there's one thing we know for certain about Port Royal. It is the shortest course on the PGA Tour at just over 6,800 yards. So I want to see who performs well on these short courses, whether or not there are drivable par fours, whether players are laying up with long irons, or if they are attacking the danger using 3-woods, using drivers. I do want to see who performs best on these short courses. So 10% off the tee on short courses, 10% in approach. I would have liked to have put more. I used 10% in last year's mixed condition model, which was pretty solid. And without any strokes gained data, 10% just kind of seems to be a default number. I did end up putting 5% in around the green. Look, with the amount of wind in the forecast, I don't think these greens are going to be hit all that often. And moving into Monday night, we corrected the amount of square footage these average greens are. So I do think around the green is going to play a factor. And I just used around the green as opposed to scrambling because I wanted to kind of just take a big picture view. I didn't want to focus on anything, say sand saves or scrambling or anything to that effect. Just wanted a big picture view of around the green, because this course is so short. I do think around the green is going to be more apt than scrambling, as opposed to a place, say like Torrey Pines, that's very long, where I would prefer scrambling as opposed to around the green at a course like that. So 5% around the green, 15% putting on Tiff Eagle Bermuda. Going all the way back to 2019, this is what we did Monday night once I found the courses that have pure Tiff Eagle greens. We took a look at those rankings. 15%, this is a little bit heavy. This is my angle. This is my tangent or attack line this week, that I think putting is going to be very, very important, as we saw that all three of the former champions in the field this week are very good on Tiff Eagle Bermuda. So 15% in putting on Tiff Eagle Bermuda. 5% birdies or better gained on short courses. Again, perhaps players are adept enough in the wind, and this is still going to be a short course. So I wanted to see who gets birdies or better, especially since when we went through the prior leaderboards, birdies kind of outweighed the bogeys mostly. So 5% there. But I do have 10% in bogeys avoided in moderate and windy conditions, and I just felt like that was the most appropriate filter to use on this metric, because I think it's going to add to the difficulty of the course, but I don't think it guarantees it to be difficult. We've seen windy or classified windy AF conditions at Port Royal, and the round was average in terms of scoring difficulty. So I do want to see who is adept enough in the wind to avoid bogeys. So 10% bogeys avoided in moderate and windy conditions. 10% driving distance on short courses. Again, similar to what I was explaining earlier with off the tee. We know this course is short. I want to see who takes advantage of short courses, whether that is using their long irons and they're just more proficient at hitting their long irons further off the tee, or who attacks shorter holes with 3-woods or perhaps drivers. So I wanted to see driving distance on short courses. To round out the mixed condition model, 5% in par 3s 225 plus. I wanted to put 10% here, kind of ran out of percentage, but this is the only range, in my opinion, that's going to be a significant factor this week at Port Royal. 15% in par 4s 350 to 400 yards. Again, this was a significant contributor to who has played this tournament well over the years. 6 of the 11 par 4s fall into this range. 4 of the 11 fall from 400 to 450. So a lot of extremely short par 4s. 15% in 350 to 4, 10% in 400 to 450. To round out the mixed condition model, I talked all week how the par 5s just aren't going to be all that important because all of the professionals generally take advantage of them. Where you're going to gain any bit is perhaps in some eagles, and that's why we incorporated birdies or better gained, not just birdies gained. But 5% in par 5s, short par 5s, 500 to 550. 2 of the 3 par 5s fall into this range, and the other par 5 is at 553. And you can see that, you can envision that playing less than 550 on some days. So there's a look at the mixed condition model that I've made for this week. Some weaknesses, look, if putting doesn't end up being a big factor, especially since we don't get strokes gained data, this is a little bit of a shot in the dark. I'm going on, the players that putt Tiff Eagle well and their performance historically here at Port Royal. So it's a little bit of a tangent or a little bit of some extrapolation on my end. But I am confident in it. But if it turns out to be incorrect, I will be weak or susceptible to that. If scrambling or sand saves specifically matter, I'll be weak with that. Perhaps if fairways instead of distance is the key factor this week, of course I will be weak to that. And then one of the more obvious potential weaknesses, perhaps bogeys avoided on short courses, bogeys avoided if the tournament does indeed play difficult. Perhaps we needed to look at that instead of moderate and windy. So there's a look at the mixed condition model in some areas that it could be weak if the tournament does not play the way I expect it to. But now let's go to Microsoft Excel, the reveal of my rankings, and I will tell you that there is no caveat this week. There is no small sample size who's leading my rankings. My number 1 player this week for the Bermuda Championship is Lucas Herbert. Alex Noren, second, Ben Griffin, Alex Smalley, and Kevin Yu round out my top 5. Taylor Pendrith, Thomas Dietrich, Lonto Griffin, Mark Hubbard, and Stuart Sink round out my top 10. Look, I've got a decent amount of weight into course value. That's why Lucas Herbert is rising considerably. He's got the lowest course value. He also rated out pretty darn well, 8th by the metrics, 6th in this field on Tiff Eagle Bermuda. He plays short par 4s, or has played short par 4s extremely well. The only thing that he has struggled with this year, or at least in the last 36 rounds, has been around the green. And I only have that at 5%, so he really rises in my rankings. And he's not really all that common, which I think he's going to get more popular than this, but based on the projected ownerships from Fantasy National, that's why Lucas Herbert is number 1 in my rankings. I really like Lucas Herbert this week. I'm not as high on Alex Noren. He did rate out well this course value. It's only one time, but he did finish top 15 his one time here at Port Royal. He also putts Tiff Eagle very, very well. Very adept at these short par fours. His weakness has been birdies are better gained on short courses. But he's been very, very good around the green. Him and Lucas Herbert were pretty close. You can see that Alex Noren a little bit lower in terms of course value. He's getting a little bit more ownership. That's why he drops. The number one player by Fantasy Nationals pure metrics is actually Adam Scott in my rankings. He's getting hurt significantly because he's not played this course, so this course value is arbitrarily high because we don't know if he's going to like Port Royal, but I think he will. Elsewhere in the top 10, Kevin, you might be a little bit of a surprise for some, especially considering I put so much weight in putting, but it didn't stop him from playing this event well when he did. He finished third the 1 year he's been here at Port Royal, and he's very unique. He is the number one player on off the tee on short courses. A lot of that has to do with his distance on short courses. Top 25 in irons. 12th in avoiding bogeys in the wind. We saw that he was top 10 in total performance in the wind. He plays the wind very, very well. Look, it's all about the putter for Kevin Yu. I'm confident that if there is a week for Kevin Yu, it'll be this one. Thomas Dietrich, very, very high on. Mark Hubbard, generally an analytical darling. And for me, the biggest surprise in my top 10 was probably Stuart Sink. He's at 1.5%. But he has played this the one time he played it. He finished fourth. It was a few years ago now, but he did finish fourth. Nothing outstanding in our most important metrics in the mixed condition model, where he has made, where he rises per se. Birdies are better gained on short courses. He's top 10 in short par fives. He's been good around the green. So he's rising in the rankings thanks to the very good course value and projected ownership. So just a quick reminder for those who are returning viewers, or if you are a new viewer, for your information, my rankings are based on a numeric formula and 3 criteria. The FNGC rank, which is an analytics or numbers-based pure ranking based on the metrics and percentages that we talked about in Fantasy National. I do give players a course value, which is an attempt at rating players based on their historical performance at the particular course. The lower the number, the better. And of course, we are playing DFS, so we're trying to find unique options. So I also factor in percent owned into rankings. All of those combine to make a value and then ranked on that. But enough rambling there. Let's get into the price board, figure out where our top pivots and the best fades and where we want to go throughout the price board. So we start with the 5 digits. And in the 5 digits, or the 10Ks, we have 4 players. Adam Scott is 10-7. Thomas Dietrich 10-5, Brendan Todd 10-3, Akshay Bhatia at 10,000 even. There are 2 players that I am very, very comfortable using this week in the 10Ks, and 2 players that I'm going to try and avoid. I'm pretty sure I'm going to avoid one of the 2, hoping to avoid the other. We'll see. But it might be surprising in which 2 that I'm avoiding. The 2 that I'm avoiding are actually the cheaper of the 10Ks. Brendan Todd, even though he is a former champion here and putts this surface amazingly well, which seems like it's contradicting a lot of what I've been talking about and what I'm valuing this week. I'm actually going to fade Brendan Todd. A lot of it to do with the ownership, and he's played this tournament twice. He won it, but then he missed the cut. So I have some concerns regarding Brendan Todd. He is not particularly adept off the tee. And because of that, I think his ownership is going to rise, as I think majority of our fellow contestants are going to think short course, off the tee is not mandatory, so they're going to target the plotters, and that's another angle that I've taken. I'm actually looking at off the tee and a little bit of distance. But a lot of it has to do with the ownership. And then the other one is Akshay Bhatia, because he has not played well in the wind at all, and he just doesn't putt Tiff Eagle well. He's not a good putter in general, but he doesn't putt Tiff Eagle well. The short par fours, he's actually struggled somewhat. And then his performance, especially with bogey avoidance in the wind, has been really bad. So I am off of these two in the 10Ks. I might sneak Bhatia in a lineup or two, but I'm trying not to. I just think Brendan Todd is going to be so widely owned. I think his ownership will get into the 20 to 25% range, that I'm just going to take the chance that the win was a little bit of a fluke. He did win the inaugural Bermuda Championship, which no one had seen the course before, and then had missed the cut the next time. So I'm going to take that angle. Too much ownership, and I'll take my chances with Adam Scott and Thomas Dietrich. I mentioned how Adam Scott's really falling just due to the fact that this course value is arbitrarily high. I set it high to account for the possibility of missed cuts if a player doesn't like the course, if they've never seen it. Adam Scott, middling owned. I imagine he'll probably be closer to the 18 to 20%, but number one on short par fours, and there are 6 of them here at Port Royal. He's also 8th in bogey avoidance in the wind. He plays well in the wind. He's the number one player on par fours, 400 to 450. So 10 of the 11 par fours here at Port Royal, he is number one in the field, tied with Doug Gim for this particular range, but still number one in the field. He's also number one in birdies, or just off your screen, number one in birdies or better gained on short courses. Just plays short courses well. So really, really like Adam Scott, and I really like Thomas Dietrich as well. I'm going to use a lot of these two. Thomas Dietrich has played this event very, very well. Runner-up last year, top 25 the first time he was here. He's not as adept on these short par fours. He actually takes advantage of the 400 to 450 par fours. He'll have to be better at the par fives. Hasn't stopped him before. And if the par threes end up mattering a little bit more than I think, or at least more than the 5% that I have in here, Thomas Dietrich has been very good. So that's where I'm going in the 10Ks. I'll make Dietrich the number one player in my 10K, or in the 10Ks, just like my rankings of the 4. The lower ownership, the previous course history, and how much good course history there is for him. I'll go Adam Scott second, Bhatia third, and Brendan Todd fourth. I will lose if Brendan Todd plays very well, just fading the ownership. And I don't know. I have some questions with Brendan Todd a little bit. All right, moving into the 9Ks. Lucas Herbert, Alex Noren, Lucas Glover, Ben Griffin, Luke List, Taylor Pendrith, and Doug Gim. I've been living in this area quite a bit in my lineup constructions. My number one player and my number 2 player, although I'm not as high on Alex Noren as it might seem, love Lucas Herbert this week. Look, when he won, Sunday's weather was atrocious, like it could be this week. Top 10 on Tiff Eagle putting, top 15 in bogey avoidance in the wind. He just loves playing in the wind. Top 10 on these shorter par fours, 400 to 450. And I don't know how much around the green is going to hurt Lucas Herbert. And just like we were talking about with Thomas Dietrich, he's number 3 in 225 plus par threes. So a lot to go with there with Lucas Herbert. Love Lucas Herbert this week. I'm sure I'll have some Alex Noren, especially since he rates out second. Just not as high on Noren as it might seem. His off the tee game is a little suspect. And I do think you're going to have to get an amount of birdies here. I don't think the winning score is going to be 9, 10, 11 in that range. I still think it's going to get to 15, 16, 17 under. And Noren just doesn't go low, especially on shorter courses. So I'll have him, but he's not as high as perhaps second. I love Ben Griffin. This is chalk I will not get away from. Very well should have won last year. Looks like he is the second most projected owned player in the slate right now. He is the only player that does not have a pink or red statistic across here. His worst is the 400 to 450 par 4s at 69th. But top 20 in bogey avoidance in the wind. He plays very well in the wind. Top 10 in approach in this field. Putts Tiff Eagle well. Not just Bermuda, which we didn't have the strokes gained putting for last year, but his putt Tiff Eagle, Bermuda, the Arnold Palmer. Let's see, he hadn't played Kapalua, the Honda, and Sea Island, the RSM. So those three courses, I mean, he's putt well enough there. I really, really like Ben Griffin. That is some chalk I will eat. Taylor Pender's getting a lot of love, and I mean, he was 6th in my rankings. Okay. He can throw up some clunker rounds. He can go 75, 76 with the best of them. I don't know. I'm a little hesitant on Taylor Pendrith. Even though I was not or am not scared away with, say Adam Scott's putter or Kevin Yu's putter, Doug Gims could scare me off a little bit. He's also getting a whole lot of ownership, which also helps in the ability to try and limit my use of Doug Gim. He plays short par 4s extremely well, extremely well. He's tied number 1 with Adam Scott on 400, 450. You see top 15 on the short, the very short par 4. So Doug Gim's got a lot going for him. It's the putter, and he does lack a little bit of distance. But probably a good play, but one that is going to be pretty chalky, and it's not going to separate you enough in the big GPPs if you're trying to win or take down a big GPP. If you're playing in the the double ups and those kinds of contests, Doug Gim's probably a good choice. Alex Smalley, the projected number 1 player or number 1 owned player on the slate, for good reason. You see he's 4th in my rankings. He's played Port Royal extremely well. Like Gim and like Kevin Yu, his putter on Tiff Eagle hasn't been good. The difference is, at least with Smalley and Gim, it has not prevented Smalley from playing well here. He is 2 for 2, both finishes inside the top 20. Whereas Doug Gim, you see the course value, it's been a lot lower. So Smalley's putter has not prevented him from playing well here. Anytime greens are a factor, you got to think about Alex Smalley. He's just very adept at hitting greens. He's very good. Same rating as Doug Gim on the very short par 4s. Top 15 as well off the tee. 3rd in irons and in bogey avoidance in the wind. Alex Smalley, I think, was top 3 or 4 in performance in the wind. So you know that the wind's not going to bother him too much. So I really like Smalley. That's a little bit more chalk that I will eat. Although I'm probably going to use more Ben Griffin than Alex Smalley. I think Ben Griffin might be a little bit more unique than Alex Smalley. That's a little bit of a gamble that I'm taking there. Mark Hubbard's Mark Hubbard's in the 9Ks, in fact, or in the 8Ks. In fact, Smalley's in the 8Ks. Oops. But anyway, in the 9Ks, that's the way I look at it. We didn't talk about Glover. Okay, I guess. Again, just like last week where I thought he would struggle, he played better than I thought. The putting on Tiff Eagle is suspect. He's not the best in terms of distance, which I think is going to have a little bit of a factor. Not the best around the green either. Luke Glover's probably fine, but I'm just other places in the 9Ks. Luke List, again, one of these guys that just is not good with the flat stick, that takes advantage of the par fours. Might have him a little bit, but like I said, Doug Gim, I'm sure I'll have a time or two, although I'm trying to limit my exposure. I'm just really, really, really high on Ben Griffin. Really, really high on Lucas Herbert. So that's where I've been going in the 9Ks. I'm sure I'll have some Noren. I'll probably have Pendrith a time or two. And then obviously Smalley, who I talked about mistakenly in the 9Ks, even though he's at 8,900. So let's move to those 8,000, shall we? Smalley, we talked about extensively. Mark Hubbard, Nick Hardy, Ryan Palmer, Davis Riley, Stuart Sink, Dylan Wu, Brandon Wu, Vincent Whaley, and MJ Duffy. We talked about Smalley a lot. I want to talk about Ryan Palmer some more. Even though he's not played this course, it seems like it would fit Ryan Palmer to a tee. Short, generally easy, although the wind could be an issue. But he's from Texas. He's used to playing in the wind. He's actually decent on Tiff Eagle. 5th on these short par 4s. 4th and off the tee on short courses, where he has struggled, just like Lucas Herbert, just like Thomas Dietrich to a little bit lesser of an extent. Ryan Palmer has not been as good around the green, so that could be an issue, but par 5s he should take advantage of. This feels like a very good Ryan Palmer course, and to see him at 7%, slightly surprising. Thought he would have been a little bit more, so I really like Ryan Palmer this week, especially tomorrow in a round 1 showdown when the winds are down. He plays easy courses so darn well, and the course is going to be very easy tomorrow. So he might be best targeted in a round 1 showdown, but I still like him for full week or full tournament as well. Davis Riley, somebody else that I really like this week. The putter, a little bit less adept with the putter on Tiff Eagle than I would like. He just doesn't have a lot of horrendous statistics except for around the green. He's good at the short par 4s, 22nd in irons. He's also played this event really well the one time he was here. Again, it's only one time, small sample size, but I like Davis Riley this week. I like Brandon Wu more than Dylan Wu, and a lot of that has to do with the struggles that Dylan Wu has had in the wind. Dylan Wu has really, really struggled in the wind. So if he does not shoot low tomorrow, I see this not being a good week for Dylan Wu. So I'm going to use Brandon Wu. 4th in these very short par 4s. Off the tee, very good approach, very good. Top 20 in bogey avoidance in the wind. Where he has struggled, he does lack a little bit of distance, and Brandon Wu's going to have to be much better on these par 5s. But I do think that he'll perform well this week at Port Royal. Vincent Whaley's fine. Just kind of lukewarm on Vincent Whaley. So in the 8Ks, I mentioned how I was going to be using a whole lot of Alex Smalley. Pretty darn confident there. It's a good play. Didn't mention Hardy. Okay. I would use more Hardy than MJ Duffy for sure. But, it's not a strong feeling. Really like Ryan Palmer. Really like Davis Riley. And I like Brandon Wu quite a bit as well. So that's where I'm at in the 8Ks. Moving into the upper 7s. Not going to go through every player. Look, if you don't want to believe in Kevin Yu, I understand he's shown you very, very little to be confident, especially around the putter. He's not a good putter at all. But with the emphasis that I have in off the tee and in the distance side of off the tee, Kevin Yu is the number 1 player off the tee, especially on short courses. And he plays the wind well. Top 15 in bogey avoidance in the wind. Top 15 in distance on short courses. He takes advantage of par 5s, especially these short par 5s. And he's at least had some success here. It's only one time, but he's had some success here. So I'm going to, take that angle. I'm going to believe in that. I'm going to hope that he makes a few putts. And at 7%, if Kevin Yu ends up top 20, top 25, I've gained a whole lot on my fellow contestants or our fellow contestants by taking Kevin Yu. I think it's a very, very, very worthwhile gamble. Lonto Griffin, somebody else that I want to highlight in the upper sevens, has played this event a couple of times. It's been pretty good. He's fairly unique. Top 10 on these very short par fours. Now the irons are better than what it's saying here. He is, was injured for quite a bit of the 2023 season. So the irons are better. It's only a matter of time until he starts getting back into the groove. I think this is a good get-right spot for Lonto Griffin. He also plays very well in the wind. I like Lonto Griffin quite a bit this week, so I will be using a lot of the what seems to be unique upper sevens, at least according to Fantasy National. Let's see. CT Pan generally plays shorter courses well, so you can take a look at CT Pan. Although he has not played Bermuda the best. You can take a look. Justin Lauer's getting a whole lot of love. This probably has to be a fade for me, even though I like the player. I don't like the ownership, but he has been very good at Port Royal. Top 20 in these short par fours. Top 5 in irons in this field. Again, I like the player. I do not like the ownership. This has to be a fade for me. Not a lot else in the upper sevens, really. Matty Schmidt has really struggled here. Peter Quest, I seem to try to back this guy a lot. If the winds weren't up, I would think Peter Quest would be very good here. Just like Ryan Palmer, I think Peter Quest is a round one showdown play because the course should be very, very easy with very little wind, and he plays short courses well, extremely well. But we haven't seen him in the wind, and he has not played well when it's difficult. And the more wind there is, I think this is going to get more difficult. So I think Peter Quest is more of a round one showdown play. Moving into the lower sevens, mid and low sevens. Let's see. Patton Kizzire, if you're as big on the putting as I am, he is the number one putter on TIFF Eagle, but he doesn't have a lot else going for him. Take that what you will. Peter Malnati has played extremely well here, so this is a function of prior course performance versus analytics. If you're a big believer in the prior course performance, Peter Malnati is somebody you want to think about, but he does not have a lot analytically going for him. Andrew Novak might be somebody to take a peek at. Top 15 putting on this surface. It's also top 7th off the tee on short courses. Now his irons will have to be better, no doubt about that. But he's also pretty adept in the wind. So take a sneaky look at Andrew Novak. Been pretty middling at best at this course. But Andrew Novak's somebody I'm going to sneak into, a few lineups to gain some uniqueness as well, especially if I'm hovering in the Kevin Yu or, perhaps a little bit further down in the Russell Knox or Smotherman area. I might give Novak a few looks this week. Speaking of Russell Knox, he's been very, very good at this tournament, but for being a Scot, or for being Scottish, he actually doesn't play the wind well at all. 107th in bogey avoidance in the wind. Doesn't putt this surface very well. This is a pretty easy fade for me, so just like Brendan Todd, Russell Knox is somebody that I'm going to full fade, basically, and if he plays well, I'll lose. Instead, I've been going to Scott Piercy. He really, really plays the wind well. The irons will have to be significantly better, but decent putter on this surface. Again, plays these short par fours really, really well. It's more so the fact that he plays in the wind well is why I'm targeting Scott Piercy in the low sevens. Good evening, P. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Your Brian Gay comment last week can be moved over to this week, as this is a Brian Gay course. 4 for 4, average finish of 7th. So hopefully I steered you away from Brian Gay last week, as he did miss the cut. And even though he doesn't rate out well for me, you can't ignore his prior course performance here at Port Royal. But thanks for jumping in chat. Hopefully things are going well for you and you're ready for the Bermuda Championship. Elsewhere in the low 7s, not a whole lot. I mentioned how I was really into the 9s and a lot of the players in the 8s. Didn't roster Brian Gay last week, but will this week. Yeah, it's probably smart. Again, like I said, we'll get to Brian Gay. He doesn't rate out well for me because he's not actually in very good form. But you can't ignore his prior success here. But I'm not too much into the low 7s. If I'm into the 9s and the 8s, it probably tells you the kind of lineups I'm building. But in the lower ends of the 7s, 2 7K plays exactly that I want to recommend to you all. First is being Brent Grant, second off the tee, top 10, also on short par 4s, top 25 in putting on Tiff Eagle. He's 1 for 1 at this tournament. It was a made cut, middling finish. He's going to be very, very unique. The irons, just like a few of these other players, are going to have to be better, but got plenty of distance. You've seen I'm taking this off the tee and distance angle this week along with the putting. And Brent Grant's been acceptable in the wind. So going to use a lot of Brent Grant. Him and a couple others are going to be the death of me if they don't play well, especially considering what seems to be a very, very unique Brent Grant. I'm thinking of players like Kevin Yu as well. That will be the death of me. Lonto Griffin. These players that seemingly are less than 10% owned. I'm going to have a significant amount of weight or exposure to, trying to find some uniqueness. The last 7K play I do want to mention, Cameron Percy. Look, he played pretty well, especially at the beginning of the week last week. Kind of faltered over the weekend, but he's played Port Royal really darn well in 3 tries. Good putter on the surface. Good at these short par 4s. Good off the tee. 8th in bogey avoidance in the wind. He really, really likes playing in the wind. Now, he doesn't have a lot of distance, but at 7K, you're getting some pretty good metrics here. And the fact that he doesn't have a lot of distance, he hasn't performed particularly well on these short par 4s, hasn't stopped him from playing well here. And a lot of that's probably into the fact that he's played these par 5s well, or plays 500, 550 par 5s well. He's actually very adept at 225 plus par 3s. So take a long look at Cameron Percy. I think he's also a reasonable inclusion at the bottom part of your lineups this week in Port Royal. We move to the 6s, and I try to give you all a few names every week for the 6Ks. Look, this is an alternate field level event. The 6Ks is pretty barren. It's pretty bad. I will give you a couple of names. The aforementioned Brian Gay. Yes, he does not rate out well. Really, the only thing saving him is the putter on Tiff Eagle. He is the number 2 putter on this surface. But you see, deep red at a lot of other statistics. He's also getting quite a bit of love for good reason, because his course value is so good. He's not going to be unique in the 6Ks, but I will mention it because Brian Gay and the Bermuda Championship are synonymous. Again, 4 for 4, average finish of a 7th place finish. So Brian Gay really likes Port Royal, but analytically, it does not look pretty. Elsewhere in the 6Ks, at the same price, again, I will just casually mention Kevin Roy. 7th in irons. He has plenty of distance. Look, I'm not nearly as high on him this week as I was last week. I really liked Kevin Roy last week, and he played okay. Nothing spectacular. Not nearly as high on him this week, but I will mention it as a possible 6K play. He is decent on the surface, more field average. Decent on these short par fours. Off the tee is okay. It's all about the irons. He also goes somewhat low, or is fairly adept. Birdies are better on short courses, so you can take a look at Kevin Roy. Again, not in love with it, but something to think about. If I am in the 6Ks, and I'm trying to avoid it. That's why I really like Cameron Percy and Brent Grant, trying to bottom my teams out at 7,000 even. But if you're needing a couple of extra hundred in savings, take a look at Ryan Gerard. He rated out decently in this mixed condition model. Again, par fives are generally his thing. You don't think he's going to gain too much with that, but actually, the few rounds he's been on Tiff Eagle, he's putt well. Top 40 in the short par fours. He's actually played well in the wind. Very small sample size. I believe it was 1 or 2 rounds. So very small sample size, but he did play that round or those few rounds well in the wind. The par fives, of course, just off your screen. 33rd. So, he still takes advantage of the par fives even if they aren't the longer par fives. He's also pretty darn good around the green. And if the wind really does pick up, that's just going to enhance the importance of the around the green. And Ryan Gerard is pretty darn good around the green. So, if there's a 6K play that I would recommend, it's Ryan Gerard. I'm trying not to go there, but I don't mind if I do. If I'm going to try to make some greedier lineups, say as Adam Scott, Lucas Herbert, Adam Scott and Thomas Dietrich, things of that nature. But there's a look at the price board and the possible pivots and fades and how I see it shaking out this week in Port Royal. Let's start making some lineups. We'll start with tiers contests for those who play tiers. Tier 1, we have Adam Scott, Thomas Dietrich, and Brendan Todd. I think it's a two-man tier. I'm actually going to go with Thomas Dietrich based on the fact that he is the lower projected owned. Now, in tiers, I could see Dietrich being more owned, but we also know he likes Port Royal. Runner-up last year, top 25 the other time he played Port Royal. So I know he likes Port Royal. I also know he likes playing in the wind, or is at least adept playing in the wind. So give me Thomas Dietrich. I think he's a safer choice in Tier 1. He might be slightly more owned than Adam Scott in tiers contests, but I think it's clearly not Brendan Todd. So give me Thomas Dietrich. Tier 2, Batia, Lucas Herbert, Alex Noren, Lucas Glover, and Luke List. Don't care. It's Lucas Herbert, my number 1 player in my rankings. He's also projected to be the most unique in this tier, which I don't think that's going to end up being the case. But give me Lucas Herbert in Tier 2. Tier 3, Ben Griffin, Taylor Pendrith, Doug Gim, and Alex Smalley. I like all 4 of these players, as you can tell by the rankings. 3rd, 6th, 15th, and 4th. I'm going to take Ben Griffin, even if he is the most projected owned player in this tier. I do think I'm getting some uniqueness with Lucas Herbert. I'm hoping to get some uniqueness with Dietrich. But the thing with Ben Griffin over these other players, except for maybe Taylor Pendrith, and I've got other concerns with Taylor Pendrith, look at the putting. Ben Griffin, Taylor Pendrith, they are pretty darn good on Tiff Eagle. Doug Gim, Alex Smalley, they're not. Now, Alex Smalley has played this event really darn well, so the putter hasn't held him back in that regard. But it could. It always could. The issue I could see with Taylor Pendrith is that he is not the most adept in the wind. So give me Ben Griffin. I know he is good in the wind, and he's the only player that doesn't have a pink or red statistic or a field or a negative to the field statistic. So give me Ben Griffin in Tier 3. Tier 4. Mark Hubbard, Nick Hardy, Ryan Palmer, Davis Riley, Stuart Sink, Dylan Wu, and Vincent Whaley. If this was just a round 1 tiers, give me Ryan Palmer. I think he's going to be fine in a full tournament contest as well. But because this is full tournament, I'm more leaning towards Davis Riley. I also like, well, he's in tier 5. Never mind. Yeah. Give me Davis Riley in tier 4. Ryan Palmer is fine. I don't hate that at all either. I think Mark Hubbard is safe. I think he's got the highest floor of these players in this field, in this tier, excuse me. But I think his ceiling is fairly capped. So give me Davis Riley in tier 4. Tier 5, Brandon Wu, MJ Duffy, Lonto Griffin, Peter Quest, Kevin Yu, Troy Merritt, and CT Pan. Unlike, well, kind of like tier 3, how I was going with Ben Griffin because of the putter, this is kind of why I'm staying away from Kevin Yu in tier 5, even though he's the highest rated, because that putter can just flat take him out of a tournament. So instead, I'm kind of looking at Brandon Wu and Lonto Griffin. Now, Lonto Griffin does kind of scare me a little bit. I'm not 100% sure he is back to full health. With that said, I think he's going to be unique enough that it's a worthwhile home run play. So if you're looking for the home run play in tier 5, I think it's Lonto Griffin. I'll take Brandon Wu. I don't feel great about it because I think I'm starting to get a little bit too chalky. If you're not scared with the putter, go Kevin Yu, because he looks like he's going to be very unique. So it's between those 3. I'll go Brandon Wu. Lonto Griffin, if you're scared of Kevin Yu's putter, and if you're not scared of Kevin Yu's putter, it's Kevin Yu. Finally, tier 6, we have, and I think I can get out of the way enough for you all. Tier 6, Kelly Craft, Robert Stredd, Camilo Villegas, Doc Redman, Tano Goya, Hank Lebiota, and Jimmy Walker. Ugh. Don't like a whole lot in here. Redman and Lebiota have played this course fairly well. So has Robert Strebb. Doc Redman's probably the best option in here, considering the putter. The shorter par 5s. The thing with Lebiota just plays well in the wind. Very well in the wind. But I still think it's Doc Redman. So give me Doc Redman in tier 6. So this tier's construction, we go Thomas Dietrich, Lucas Herbert, Ben Griffin, tier 4, Davis Riley, although Ryan Palmer is still a pretty attractive option as well. Tier 5, I'll go Brandon Wu, although Lonto Griffin and Kevin Yu also make a lot of sense. And then tier 6, I will go with Doc Redman with maybe an eye on Hank Lebiota for another home run play possibility. But there's a look at tiers. Let's move to classic lineups, see how our fellow contestants are building their lineups and how we can maneuver around that to try and build optimal lineups for these big GPP contests. So for our fellow contestants, if they're going to go with stars and scrubs only because Brian Gay has been getting clearly the most attention in the 6Ks, and it's not a whole lot, but I mean 8.5 for a 6K is pretty significant. If they're doing that, they're going to try to squeeze in like a Brendan Todd, maybe a Ben Griffin, Alex Smalley. Shoot. Alex Smalley, yeah. Oh, this is easy. 7,400 per player that's left. You know, in the lower sevens, take your choice. Like Justin Lauer at 76, been getting quite a bit. So now at 72, you've got options such as Austin Smotherman, Kelly Craft. If they don't go to Lowry, you might go Ryan Moore. Let's just throw Kelly Craft into this. 16.2%, pretty hideous, and that's with a sub 10% Brian Gay, in case our fellow contestants are willing to go into the 6Ks. Nowhere near any of this. I like I like all these players. I told you Ben Griffin is somebody I'm not going to be able to get away from. Alex Smalley, the same. But this kind of construction, and this is why a lot of the reason why I'm off Brennan Todd, it's just too darn popular. Just way too darn popular. So I'll take my chances. If our fellow contestants are going more balanced build, we can maneuver around that fairly easily. Let's see. Taylor Pendrith. If they start their lineup with Taylor Pendrith, they'll go Pendrith, Mark Hubbard. Actually, they'd probably still fit Alex Smalley into this. Mark Hubbard, 77 per. Brandon Wu would be in this, I would think. Yeah, Justin Lauer. And then at 75, not the most popular range. Again, you're coming down into the 74 maybe for Ryan Moore. 73 for maybe Russell Knox. Let's throw Russell Knox into this because that Russell Knox is a full fade for me. So here's another lineup that looks like it would be pretty darn popular. And again, right at that 16 or just slightly above 16%. And more of a balanced build. You could probably have them scoot up a little bit on the price board. Probably Ben Griffin. I mean, that's going to be the most obvious way to spend that 200. That's 16.5. I'm just trying to use some different names for you all. But there's a look at a balanced build that looks like it's going to be pretty darn popular. So how are we going to maneuver around that chalk and that chalky shell of a lineup? And thanks to the two of you who have filled out the poll question. Again, if you're watching live, please fill that out. Would love to hear what the community has been thinking about this week in regards to that. But let's try to build a Stars and Scrubs lineup that is going to, maneuver around all that chalk. And the only way I'm able to do that, I gave you a couple of names down in the 6Ks. Ryan Gerard at the same price as Brian Gay. You can take a look at Kevin Roy. But I'm going to use Ryan Gerard. He's the player that I've been using in the 6Ks if I go down here. So Ryan Gerard. And then, again, up here, I'm trying to get the Adam Scott and Thomas Dietrich start. Sometimes I'm able to, maybe do that. Sometimes maybe not. This could easily be like a Thomas Dietrich, Lucas Herbert, although I'm going to save Lucas Herbert for the next lineup that I build. Adam Scott Herbert, Dietrich Herbert, things of that nature. But I'm definitely going to try to get, if I'm using Ryan Gerard, I'm going to use Adam Scott and or Thomas Dietrich. And then you see we have 7,400 per player. You're kind of missing out on the price ranges I really, really like, which is that, lower 9, except for Lucas Herbert, the lower 9 and the 8s, which I really, really like the 8s this week. But I think you can do it, in the mid 7s. You can take a look at Peter Malnati. Andrew Novak is somebody that I highlighted a little bit earlier. Of course, we had the 2 7Ks exactly. Cameron Percy and name just escaped me. Cameron Percy and Brent Grant. I'm going to go with Cameron Percy, who I think is a little bit more of a safer pick in that, but has played Port Royal extremely well, as you can see from there. 8th in bogey avoidance. Also plays these short par 5s pretty darn well. Throw in Cameron Percy in this. And, you're left at 77 here. You can throw in a semi. Yeah, you're at 6.6%. You can throw in a semi popular player. Maybe you like Justin Lauer a whole lot. You can throw him in there. Again, I mentioned Harry Hall. Let's see. Patton Kazire for the putting. Number 1 putter on this surface. In fact, really, I only use Ryan Gerard to highlight the fact that you can drop into the sixes, but you really don't have to. But I'll just throw Justin Lauer into this to finalize that lineup. You're under that magic 10%, so you're probably looking at a unique lineup thanks to the combination of these three. You're getting Adam Scott and Thomas Dietrich, two players that are favorites in the tournament for good reason. Justin Lauer, one of the more popular plays for good reason. He's played very well here. But you don't even have to drop into the sixes and still use these two players. We'll bottom out at Cameron Percy. Actually, you know what? We'll change it. Let's go Brent Grant. And I'm going to use 7,200. I'm going to use Scott Piercy. He plays in the wind very, very well. It's simple as that. He's the number one wind player in this field. Now, he hasn't played Port Royal all that great, but I think that changes this week. Top 15 on these very short par fours. The irons will have to be better, no doubt about that, but I really like what I see from Scott Piercy, and especially with the amount of wind that's in the forecast. Gives us 7,300 per player. Again, you can mix and match this how you see. Maybe you go with a Sam Bennett, who seems like he's getting ignored. Good evening, Gabe. Brian Gay is the only 6K golfer I'm playing this week, and not that much exposure. Yeah, I agree. He, at least according to Fantasy National, is actually getting quite a bit of love. I mean, for good reason. He's 4 for 4, average finish of 7th here, but I am not in love with it. I'm sure I'll have him once just to have him, but I'm trying to avoid the 6Ks. I don't mind Ryan Gerard, but I'm trying to stay away from the 6Ks. But you can do this Adam Scott, Thomas Dietrich, and not drop into the sixes at all. Scott Piercy, who I just mentioned, if you are willing to do double 7K, we'll go Cameron Percy and Brent Grant. Again, that's Scott Piercy. This is 76. This is Justin Lauer again, who won't kill your ownership. Let's see. Again, Harry Hall, who let me down big time last week, but I think should be okay. I mentioned Andrew Novak. Sam Bennett is somebody that you can, take a look at. He seems to be getting ignored, and we know he is capable of putting up very good weeks. This is an ultra unique lineup that's still using two of the tournament favorites, Scott and Dietrich. A little bit suspect down here, but you are definitely getting the uniqueness, and uniqueness that I think is well worthwhile. Again, Piercy and his number one strokes gained total, at least with the players in this field, number one strokes gained total in the wind. Cameron Percy has been very good here at Port Royal. Brent Grant, a lot more speculative, admittedly. I really like what I see from him. Top 10 on very short par fours. Second off the tee, especially on short courses. So that's why I like Brent Grant. But the lineups that I've been mostly going to, which you can probably guess considering the areas of the price board that I'm at, have been balanced. And I imagine majority of our fellow contestants are going balanced. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult to get our uniqueness, but I think we're going to be able to. My number one player in the entire field this week, Lucas Herbert. Love Lucas Herbert this week, especially with that forecast. You think about he won the Bermuda Championship with horrid conditions on that Sunday. Looks like it could very well be the same type of conditions. I don't mind starting this team at Lucas Herbert. Ben Griffin, chalk that I won't get away from, but I really, really like Ben Griffin. More of a what I think will be a round one showdown play, but Ryan Palmer. I think this is a perfect Ryan Palmer course. Short, generally easy, although the wind will pick up, but he's from Texas. He should handle the wind. We drop down into the upper sevens. This will be Kevin Yu more than likely for me. but I'll throw Lonto Griffin into one of these lineups, and we're back down at that magic 7,200 threshold where you can go, say, Ryan Moore if you're there, Andrew Novak, Sam Bennett, Austin Smotherman. A little bit more owned, but somebody who I think is probably going to play fairly well. Scott Piercy, Cameron Percy. Mix and match the bottom seven, your bottom seven players how you see fit. But a little bit more chalky only because of Austin Smotherman. Like if we come off of Austin Smotherman, go to it's just who I've been going to, Cameron Percy. You're at that 9.5%, looking like a pretty darn unique lineup, starting with Herbert. Love Ben Griffin this week. Ryan Palmer I think should be pretty good. Lonto Griffin, I think he's more healthy. The irons are better than what his ranking is going to show. Very good on this surface. Also top 10 at these very short par fours. But there are so many options in the 9s and 8s. Lucas Herbert, who I'm starting majority of my teams with. I mean, you can go Ben Griffin. This might be a touch too chalky, but if you go, say, Ben Griffin, Doug Gim, Davis Riley, you'd really have to find your uniqueness and say like a Kevin Yu to really balance this out. But, you can probably bottom this team out at Justin Lauer. And, yeah, I mean, it's Lonto Griffin. So you can go super balanced. This is much more chalky because I'm using players that I like. Ben Griffin, Doug Gim, who I don't think is going to be too bad. You could put Alex Smalley, but that's even more ownership here. Davis Riley, I think, is going to be good. Kevin Yu's going to be your uniqueness, and I'm not terribly scared of the putter since he's already performed well here once before. You can throw in Dylan Wu into this, maybe find some money for Dylan Wu or Brandon Wu, who I'm higher on. So those are the lineups that I've been building the most. More so with the Lucas Herbert, say Ben Griffin or Lucas Herbert, Ryan Palmer, Davis Riley type lineups. My one and done for this week, I am going to go with Thomas Dietrich. For as much as I really, really like Lucas Herbert and his chances this week, I'm just confident that Thomas Dietrich is going to perform well. He might not win the tournament, but I'm just confident he's going to perform well. He loves playing in the wind, or is very adept at playing in the wind. We've seen he's played Port Royal extremely well, top 25, and then runner-up last year. So my one and done will be Thomas Dietrich, and I'm going with more balanced builds this week. P and Gabe, thanks for jumping in chat like you always do. Always appreciate it. You also have supported the channel for a long time. And thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, and supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, subscribing. It's much appreciated. Had to mix in some Adam Scott stars and scrubs when I saw the ownerships. Yeah, I don't know what you're seeing, but I'm a little bit surprised to see him as far down as 15.5. So definitely going to have some Adam Scott, but I'm higher on Thomas Dietrich. But I also think Thomas Dietrich will probably be more owned than Adam Scott. But thanks again for all the support. Love doing what I do, taking a look at golf statistics, and trying to give you all a statistician, data analyst perspective of what he sees, trying to find optimal plays, optimal utilization, and all of that, and hopefully helping you all win some money in the process. For all of the wagers you have made this week for the Bermuda Championship, for all of the DFS contests you play this week for the Bermuda Championship, for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.